Welcome back to the Gruber Morning Show, a division of or a part of Gruber Motor Company. I'm Pete Gruber.
I'm Mark Schaffner. Good morning and welcome.
And one of the, the image, we always talk about that. Let's start there. That is an AI-generated image, again, of a newsroom. And we'd love to hear from you guys. If you want us to post something else back there and let us know what your ideas are, and we'll give it a shot. We'll let AI conjure up something different.
I love the blues and those are some of my favorite colors. This is probably my favorite newsroom one that we've had so far.
Cool. You too. We've got our first comment question. It's George joining us. Good morning, guys. Good morning, George. How are you? And one of the things I thought we could lead with this morning was there was an interesting article in Motor Trend about the Lucid Sapphire, which Lucid Air Sapphire, which is quite a remarkable car. And I love the style of writing here, so I'm going to I'll just give you some of the, or I'm going to paraphrase some of the portions of this article. It says, "Thanks to electrification, we are in a new era of automotive records. Every day, powerful and torquey EVs redefine what it means to be fast, offering such blistering acceleration that it would break the rules of any NHRA-sanctioned event." You know, this is very true. I remember back in the day when it was only ICE engines, if you were able to muster a car or build a car, and especially a muscle car, and somehow reach the 11-second quarter-mile range or below, they would ban you unless you went back and got yourself a roll cage inside that car. So your average daily driver would no longer qualify for being able to go to the quarter-mile drags. Well, today, 11 seconds is slow in the EV world.
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
Yeah. So that's what they mean by that. But they say, but even with that in mind, there was no way that he was ready for that outrageous thrust. He was test driving one of these Lucid Air Sapphires, offered up by the electric world's newest record breaker. Now, this is the 2024 Lucid Air Sapphire. It has a 3-motor powertrain, which delivers 1,234 horsepower. That's kind of a cool number if you think about it. It's consecutive.
Oh, yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4. All right. With 1,430 pound-feet of torque, making it the world's most powerful production four-door sedan in history.
Yeah, and that picture up there reminds me, and I've seen a couple of Lucids here in Phoenix, just emotionally, that's probably the most beautiful four-door sedan I have ever seen.
Well, you like it, yeah.
I love the look of it. I've although I haven't been around the Sapphire, the general look of the Lucid Air is just so absolutely stunning.
And if you have one following you, it's unmistakable during the day or at night, especially because there's a light bar that goes all the way across there.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember my first experience was going home in my Tesla Roadster, and car comes up behind me with that light bar, and I thought, oh, is that a Lucid? And sure enough, it was. But you know, the cool part was about a quarter mile later, I took my left turn into my residential neighborhood, and the car followed me, and I thought, oh, he must live in my neighborhood. Well, he's following me, then he pulls alongside. We're on a small residential street, and he flags me over. And so anyway, we both pulled over. He rolled down his window. I rolled down mine. He said, you know, I love your Roadster, and I want you to know I've been watching you in Roadsters. And first he asked, why do you have so many? Right? Well, they're not all my cars. I'm test driving, right? And then he says, you were my inspiration for buying one of these.
Oh my gosh, that is so cool.
And he said he ended up waiting 7 months to get one because there was a long lead time. Now, this was the Lucid Air, not the Sapphire, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was quite a remarkable car. So anyway, the article continues here. Upgraded from the already quick Air, this Lucid Air Sapphire vaults you to 0 to 60 in 1.89 seconds, which is actually a tenth of a second quicker than the Tesla Model S Plaid. And it will reach a manufacturer-claimed top speed of 205 miles per hour. Now, they give these loaners sometimes to the press. And guys, can you set it up so we can get one of these loaners? Because we can do a pretty good job of promoting a car like this, since this is what we do between podcasts and repairs and all that.
I mean, think of it, guys. We could take one of these Lucid Airs, put it up next to a Tesla Roadster, kind of a drag strip style,
Right.
and do a quick takeoff and watch the Roadster, which is a notoriously quick car, eat dust.
Get spanked. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And of course, that would be, I think, in the world of social media, that could be something that could go viral. So if you're listening, Lucid, we are interested in doing the same type of test that this magazine did. And we're going to claim that we have more expertise. We can get into the technical parts. We won't do a Sandy Munro teardown on your car, but we'll certainly give it a bit more, technical attention than these guys did that were writing this article. So anyway, it continues. It's a tenth faster than the Model S Plaid. It will reach the 205 mile per hour top speed. Now, they did point out there was no way to test that last number in their 25-minute first test drive of the flagship Air. And I'm not even sure that we have a track around here that we'd be able to test at 205 miles per hour. And you certainly wouldn't want to do it on the freeways here, because that would be a ticket that would probably put you into an orange suit for a while, You
get a free stay at a not so nice hotel, Pete.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we get a free stay, and Lucid might not get their car back for a while.
So they said they launched the thing again and again, and then once more for good measure. It was a pretty exciting experience. The specs again are 1,234 horsepower, 1,430 pound-feet of torque, 1.9 seconds 0 to 60, top speed 205. Now here's one. The price as tested, $249,000. So that puts it in a league all its own in the EV world.
Yeah, it does. I had two reactions when I first saw this article. The first one you've already heard. Just wow, what an incredible car! What an incredible look! Incredible feel. I was reading the Motor Trend article on it. They had a chance to drive it as well, and they talked about how they could accelerate around corners in the same way as they could in a Rimac Nevera.
Mm-hmm.
It had that kind of performance capabilities. And the second take, what in the heck is Lucid doing, focusing on a car that's never going to see the light of day except for a little tiny sliver of the market, when they are needing badly to sell cars to the public?
Yeah. The high volume production type cars. And that's a valid question. In fact, Fiskars is facing the same problem with their Ronin. Here we are. We're still unprofitable. We're, way behind the curve, and they're working on a concept car to be released as a, high-end EV sports car. You question the sanity there.
You really do. It's like these, this isn't the first time I've said this. Lucid is a great company of engineers, and it seems like the salespeople have less sway than the engineers right now in the development cycle and in the prioritization of work.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of a shout out to Farzad on some of the stuff that he's talked about with Lucid recently.
Mm-hmm.
Farzad has a really good video where he mentions an awful lot. He digs deep into some of the financials and stuff on Lucid. In fact, don't we have a picture that we could throw up for that?
Yeah, Jesse, if you can pop up the Farzad picture in our image folder. Farzad, by the way, was on our podcast 3 months ago or so, and a very bright young man. I'm very impressed with him. As Jesse pointed out, he's able to take sometimes difficult concepts and put them in layman's terms, and also connect the dots with things like, earnings reports, for example. And he did a pretty good takeoff on the Lucid situation. And there's that's what you'll see on YouTube, and it's the one to look for. But it's a little bit clickbaity. Lucid is on the brink of collapse, and he has a number of justifications he feels for that assumption. Mark is looking into it.
Yes, I definitely am. I haven't even watched the entire video yet, but I intend to do so by Tuesday and have a more full response because when like you, it's a little clickbaity. I see on the brink of collapse. Okay, I better find out what he's thinking here. It also is a good challenge to us to up our game a little bit more.
It is, yes.
And we will definitely be doing that. I think there are many of his comments that I've seen appear to be on point, at least on the surface, how he presents the argument. But in my opinion, I've already seen some parts of that video, and I'm only about halfway through it, that I believe, in my opinion, are just some startling assumptions that he's making that are just kind of thrown out there. They're not well supported at all, and they make, to me, a lot of the basis of his argument. Therefore, I think we need to take a little bit of a deeper dive ourselves. You and I both have said, hey, you know, the Saudis are bankrolling these guys. They're not going anywhere. They're going to be fine. So I'll take that. Why I like to call it an honest look, more of a deep dive, and I'll have more for you on Tuesday and more for the audience out here.
And we've had some discussion. We agreed that rather than just make flippant comments like, well, you know, the Saudis will take care of them and their future is secure. I think we owe it to our viewers to give some more in-depth analysis comparable to what Farzad has been doing. And he's inspired us to dig deeper and give you guys some relevant information and some analysis when these types of financials come out. You know, they're not the only ones. Lucid is not the only one suffering from these kinds of problems.
Right.
We've got Rivian, you know, we've got, well, actually all of the new EV manufacturers except for Tesla, which finally turned the corner 3 years ago.
Well, and if you look back in the press, first back to 2008, and then secondly, back to 2017, right when they were getting ready to put out the Model 3. There was an awful lot of press then that was negative on Tesla, and especially in the 2018 press, there was a lot of naysayers saying Tesla's on the brink of bankruptcy. They're never going to make it. They keep pushing out the build on this new supposedly mass market car. And they just write them off. They say
the same headlines. I remember. Yes,
it's the same type of headlines. So that's part of why I feel like we need to do our own honest look or deep dive look at okay, what's behind all this, and maybe it's true that the Saudis are going to just ride to the rescue as needed and Lucid's going to be fine. Maybe it's true exactly what Farzad is saying, is that Lucid's on the brink of collapse and they might be gone. I think the truth is in there somewhere, but I think it's probably somewhere in the middle.
And in the meantime, Lucid continues to get accolades. They were actually named by Motor Trend as the best luxury car that you can buy in 2023. I remember when the same magazine claimed that the Tesla Model S was the best car for a particular year. I forget what year that was. And what was amazing was the first time in history, all of the judges on that panel unanimously agreed and gave them a 100% rating.
I remember that. That's several years ago. It had to have been somewhere around 2013 or 2014 when the Model S was really coming out and becoming a thing, as it were.
So it looks like we got a bunch of questions coming in. Michael Aldea joined us, the early Tesla Roadster ESS pack expert, and he's waving at us. Welcome, Michael. I don't know if you caught the session yesterday. It was a pretty good one, Tesla Roadster session. We're going to be republishing it. We had an error in there, and it'll be back on the on our YouTube channel. But it's one that you may want to watch. On Instagram, Alex in Pomona, he says, "Can you talk about Tesla's squeaky arm controls? Apparently, it's a common issue. I'm dealing with it on my Model 3 with 31,000 miles." Don't have a lot of expertise with that, unfortunately, because we see out-of-warranty cars, and the Model 3s are mostly covered by warranty these days, unless we get something that the customer wants done that is out of the normal parameters for Tesla to handle. Things like improvements, automatic frunk openers, suspension upgrades. Can't really address that. Noisy, squeaky suspension components, apparently.
Well, and that's a great tip for us to do some further looking into because, like you said, Pete,
Mhm.
within another year or so, the non-powertrain portion of the Model 3s are going to start coming off of warranty. When people have squeaky, the squeaky control arms and issues like that, we need to be ready for them.
Sure. This is reminiscent of the Tesla Model S milling noise. It kind of sounded like a pod racer, and that motor was whining.
Yeah.
They eventually solved that.
Yeah, we had to do some looking on the older Model S's, and we learned early on about door handles and window regulators as well.
Mm-hmm. YouTube Highlander Apparel asks, "Hey Mark, what do you need if Pete G and myself and Sandy M were in the same room? 3 octavalves? LOL." Yeah, that was a great segment that Monroe did with that octavalve video.
Yeah, that's the very well good one. That's just a good one. George comes back to us as well on YouTube. He says, what do you guys think of the new Model 3 facelift?" I think he's referring to the Model 3 Highlander edition. He says, "I feel it looks like the Lucid nose."
One has to wonder whether Lucid's design may have inspired the Franz von Holzhausen team with this Tesla variation or Tesla add-on.
You know, I wouldn't be terribly surprised considering Peter Rawlinson is ex-Tesla,
Mhm.
and at least the rumor is that there's some bad blood, and I wouldn't be. And so as a result, if Elon were to go out and say, "Hey, I happen to do like the look of this. I'll never tell anybody, but maybe you can make something that looks similar."
Right. And of course, they have to be watching the industry. You know, what is the public responding to, and what do they prefer? So it's a smart move.
Yes.
YouTube PYGKLB. Good morning from the overcast Oregon Coast Range. Welcome.
Welcome, and I'm jealous already.
Yeah.
That is one of my favorite areas on the face of the earth.
And overcast sounds good right now. We get nothing but sunshine, nothing, almost all year long. Very little rain. And of course, right now we've got this heat wave thing going on. Although I must admit, yesterday was the first time I test drove a roadster that we had done a real thorough cleaning on, the PEM cleaning.
Mm-hmm.
And this one was so successful, it never went into power limit mode, which is very rare. Almost everyone we're driving these days is power limiting because of 110-degree temperature,
Right.
and asphalt and radiant heat coming off the asphalt.
Right, because that asphalt is, well, let's just say on at least 2 occasions, I've had car cookies, which is where you take cookie dough, put it on the dash of your car, let the cookies bake inside the car for about 3 hours. And one time I had these wonderful sugar cookies, and another time was white chocolate macadamia nut, and they were all perfectly done. They were not underdone in the least.
And if the pavement wasn't so dirty, you could fry an egg on that pavement and have a snack.
Absolutely, you could.
Mm-hmm.
Roger Starkey on YouTube says, "I started my work life during the decimation of the UK car industry in the 1970s. It was fueled by questionable management, union intransigence, and a disruptive external newcomer."
Ironic.
Ironic?
Yes, yeah. We actually have, and maybe we can go into that here. Jesse, if you can bring up a picture, it's called UAW President. And what the United Auto Workers is pushing for, and I think there's a deadline in September or so to mediate this thing, is, bring it up here in a moment, bear with me, you guys already see it. They of course want more money, here we go, and the UAW, Sean Fain, is the president of the United Auto Workers. He sees merit in a 32-hour work week. He says COVID-19 has taught people to live life, not work 60 to 80 hours a week. We shouldn't have to spend 7 days a week. Now, he went from 60 to 80 hours a week, 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, living in factories. Well, this is troubling because the UAW is firmly entrenched in the 3 major automakers in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point in time, they're in a very precarious position because they're attempting to pivot and move into electric vehicles, and it's not going well. Even though there's some profits, the profits are coming from ICE vehicles, but we all know that that revenue stream and that profit stream is rapidly declining and will end in 2035 in the United States.
That's right.
So again, my question is, UAW, what are you thinking? You're supposed to be representing your constituents, your union members, and you want to make sure that these folks have a job. If you guys start, pressuring the very companies that are employing your union members and making it risky for them to be able to remain in business by adding insult to injury, they're already suffering. I mean, look at some of the numbers. There's another Farsad video, by the way, on Ford. And he's showing that, every car they sell, they're losing money. Every EV they sell, they're losing money. And that gap is widening. It's not getting any better. Survival at this point is the issue. And I'm not sure that this is the time to tweak their compensation, adding more losses. This is reminiscent to me of the writers' strike in Hollywood. All right?
Sure.
ChatGPT 4 came along and everybody is speculating, what jobs is it going to take? Well, script writing is a very obvious one, anything related to that. And here these guys are now forcing management to make a decision and try to find a replacement during a strike. And if they discover that AI does as good or a better job, guess what's next? So again, my thoughts on this.
I have a lot of different thoughts on the union stuff, and I'll share some of them here, and hopefully won't go on too much of a rant. I can remember first, my grandfather worked as a union in the Northwest with the mills, and the lumber mills. They were the economy up where I lived in the northwestern U.S. They went on strike. The lumber mills said, "Look, we've got a mill that's already not profitable," and they told the unions ahead of time, "If you go on strike, we're just going to close down." They went on strike, and within 3 months, my grandfather was looking for work.
Unemployed.
He was unemployed. Everybody at that mill was unemployed. And eventually, and what happened is that the lumber company mothballed the mill. After the strike was over, after everything was settled on the labor dispute, they hired non-union guys, but they never started it up as a full lumber mill then. It became a sawdust mill where they would bring in the scraps and simply make sawdust out of them for use in plywood and stuff like that. But, the bigger thing here to me is that the United States is a land of opportunity, and the people in the United States seem to forget about that. Now, I'm not going to disparage somebody who wants to work 32 hours a week. I just want that person to understand that you're always taking and giving up opportunities. Some people will choose to seize the opportunity that we offer in this country, and some people will choose to not seize it. My son's father-in-law is a person who emigrated from the Middle East, and he chose to seize the opportunity to make a better life for himself financially and his family. At the time, he had a wife and 3 children, and he now has 4 children. And he worked 3 full-time jobs.
Yeah.
He was a McDonald's manager. He was the night shift McDonald's, the afternoon shift McDonald's manager. He was an overnight janitor, and he had a full-time morning job as well.
You got to respect that.
You got to respect that. He had great work ethic. He decided that he was going to trade his hours for wealth.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with my brother-in-law. Does the same type of thing. He'll work 6.5 days a week, basically. He'll work from Monday through Saturday. He takes time off on Sunday to be with the family, but by Sunday evening, he's getting ready for his following work on Monday morning. Some people don't choose to do that. There's nothing wrong with not choosing to do that. The only challenge is the people who choose to trade their hours for non-wealth building activities, being jealous of the people who have chosen to trade their hours for wealth building activities.
Yeah, they were lucky.
Yeah, they were lucky or something like that. Hey, if you want to have an average or a below average income, go knock yourself out. Go live life. Just understand you're paying for your life by having a below average income. And those people who have above average incomes typically have more of the hours of their day spent producing that income. To me, famously, my first job out of college, my boss worked half-time. For him, half-time was 7 hours, 7 days a week, 12 hours a day.
Really?
That's half-time. And every day, he was always the last one to leave the office. He was always there when we got there.
Right.
And he was there every Saturday and every Sunday. And he said, yeah, I just work half-time though. That's enough for me.
Mm-hmm. You know, and then there's Elon, who is famously quoted as saying, nothing great has ever been accomplished at 40 hours per week. As a business owner working 70 to 80 hours per week, I fully understand that, agree with it. Now, granted, there are people that are, such overachievers that in much shorter periods of time can achieve something, but those are very rare.
They really are. And again, I don't want to disrespect the person who chooses the work-life balance. I think that's an important thing for those people that want to choose that. They just need to understand they are giving up something in order to achieve that type of balance as well.
All right, guys, real quick, just so you know, we're about 4 pages back on comments, so
Okay.
we're building
going
up.
to catch those. My last final message then to Mr. Fain, the UAW president, is, Mr. Fain, your timing is terrible. Reconsider. YouTube, George says, at least 3 new Model 3s doesn't look like a Kermit in the Frog. Kermit the Frog anymore, LOL. Okay.
That's true. That's true. Roger Starkey on YouTube has joined us as well, talking about Lucid. He says, Lucid, unfortunately, too little, too late. The sums don't add up. Again, Roger, we're going to do a deeper dive into that and say more about it on Tuesday.
Mm-hmm. Instagram, RR Ikara. Way too much cash over the Plaid. Yeah, $250,000 for a car. But yeah, some people will decide that that's worth the investment.
And it doesn't even have full self-driving.
Yeah,
That's true.
Good point.
Roger Starkey even expands on that. He says, you know what, $248K, you could buy 2 Plaids and take a friend drag racing.
Yeah. TikTok, BN80. Hi, sent a rose. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Much appreciated.
On TikTok, Mr., where can I get the necessary information to repair Tesla cars?
You know, the way that we got it was on-the-job training, cracking into them and, starting to reverse engineer. Fortunately, we had staff to do that. We have been reverse engineering critical power equipment for now 40 years, and it was easier for us to develop the procedures, the tools, and the expertise to repair these cars. Someone starting out fresh, if you're a business owner, I would suggest trying to find somebody in the industry that you can bring in that's experienced, because there aren't any schools right now that are cranking out people that can do this type of repair. And your best shot is going to be finding someone that has worked for one of these EV manufacturers working on their cars.
Mm-hmm. PYG KLB on YouTube says, Arcimoto is another company that had a bad case of the slows. While we are not terribly familiar with Arcimoto, they're based out of Eugene, Oregon. So he would probably know, being from Oregon himself.
Mm-hmm.
And they manufacture a vehicle called the Fun Utility Vehicle. It's a tandem 2-seat, 3-wheeled electric car, or a vehicle.
Interesting. George says that it sounds like Lucid is trying to follow Tesla's beginnings by selling high-end cars to fund everyday affordable cars in their hopeful near future. At the time that Tesla was cranking out their first generation, or their second generation cars, actually, because remember, the Roadster was first generation.
Mm-hmm.
Second generation Model S, it was new, it was novel. The market was not yet flooded with those types of cars, and there were, I think, enough early adopters, well-heeled, that were able to afford those $150,000 to $180,000 sedans. Not sure that the market's the same way today because of the options, like someone pointed out earlier. Yeah, you've got a Lucid Air Sapphire, that has a 1.89 second 0 to 60, but you can get a Tesla Model S Plaid that's a tenth of a second slower and get two of them for the price of one of those Sapphires.
Yeah, and all the accolades that Lucid gets are great, but Tesla has been there and done that 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And so they are not, it seems that the accolades are not having the impact on Lucid that they did on Tesla 10 years ago. And for one, I'm kind of surprised at that.
And of course, there were tough years for Tesla. Remember Elon during the Model 3 launch. That was yet another period of time when bankruptcy was looming. Just couldn't get everything dialed in properly. There were even reports of the way too many robots that weren't functioning properly.
Yes, and they're as they're talking about the Lucid and wanting to go the route of selling that high-end luxury vehicle and then transition to selling something that's more for the masses. We do have an update on the Gravity SUV that we've talked about a little bit. That's made the press. There's just overnight this morning even. There has been some reports that that Lucid is going to officially roll out the Gravity SUV in November with all of his specs and begin opening the pre-order process.
In November already, okay.
Yep, in November this year. They're going to plan on doing production starting early in 2024, and then they'll have production ramped up by the end of 2024.
And then YouTube, Roger Starkey points out the difference between Tesla and Lucid is that Tesla was selling cars. And again, it was all about timing. Back then, there weren't many EV options. Today, you have plenty more.
Yes. Crunch Grace Hopper on YouTube. Thumb number 6, caught up soon. He says, smash that thumb, y'all. We do appreciate that. Your guys' likes and comments. They help us with the channels, and they are the kind of feedback that helps keep us going as well.
Instagram, Bingo Jones 69 says, repeat, what are your thoughts on the other Cybertruck launch and possible success of that? They've got over 2 million pre-orders now, do they not? Somewhere in that range. It was 1.9, I think.
Yeah, they're right.
Ago.
They're right at 2 million pre-orders now. I'm not sure if they've officially passed it or not yet, but they were well on their way about 3 or 4 weeks ago. The Cybertruck is a little bit smaller than I thought it was going to be, but it seems like it's going to be a really good size of vehicle. Saw a picture of one not too long ago. Where there was a Cybertruck at a stoplight, and right behind the Cybertruck was a Rivian R1T. And even taking into account the fact that it was kind of behind, so the Rivian was closer than the Cybertruck, it still looked like the Cybertruck is a somewhat smaller vehicle than the Rivian R1T. Well, I've seen the Rivian R1T in person. There's a Rivian service center about a half a mile from us here at Gruber. So we get a chance to see a lot of trucks and a lot of their SUVs driving around as they're test driving them or people driving to and from. And that R1T is not a terribly large truck. It's about the size of a Toyota Tacoma, I would think, or a Ford Ranger. Maybe, or if you have the Chevrolet Colorado. It's not a full-size pickup truck.
Sure. I think any of these EV manufacturers that are making these types of vehicles, these pickup trucks, will realize that they've arrived when you start seeing those vehicles at construction sites, or your landscaper shows up with one of these EV pickup trucks.
Yep.
Once the volume is there, it'd be interesting to see how it migrates. Right now, the Cybertruck, I can't quite decide whether this is a hipster truck or whether this is really for that hardened construction type individual that sees this as a benefit.
I agree with your take, though. I think where the first type of truck that starts showing up on the curb as a landscaper or on the construction site is the one that will know that, okay, we're starting to get some sort of real mass adoption here. And until that time, they're all going to be niche products.
From TikTok, less than 3, Giovanna. Why does there seem to be a different market for Roadster and other models? Not sure quite how to answer that other than the Roadster, of course. The traditional Tesla Roadster is a two-seater convertible. It's certainly not a family sedan, and it's a fun weekend car. So it appeals to a completely different set of demographic.
Well, it does tend to, and we don't think about very often, but there is a different economic marketplace for people who are financially independent than there is for people who are having to manage a debt burden in their lives. And the people who are financially independent, and I'm not going to say that they're rich, because many times they're not. They're simply financially independent. Sometimes there's a lot of wealth to go with it, but they're not nearly as tied down to the ups and downs in the general economy. They can weather the storm of recessions much more easily than somebody who's struggling under a load of credit card debt or something like that. And they have a completely different type of behavior as a result.
Good point. Yeah.
That is the group that's going to be interested in a Tesla Roadster, in a Model S, in a Lucid Air, in some of these other higher end vehicles almost all the time. That person who is just interested in getting value for their dollar because they have less dollar and more need on that dollar, they're not going to be as interested in these types of vehicles because they're just going to say, yeah, it's just way out of my price range.
Yeah, the term disposable income comes to mind.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right.
Christopher Korn from YouTube. He says, have any of you at Gruber visited the Gold King mine in Jerome, Arizona? Don't miss the vintage electric car. You know, that's an interesting question, because here in the state of Arizona, we have a few ghost towns, and Jerome is probably the largest and the most popular one. It's the aftermath of a short or brief mining operation that either ran out of ore or the economics changed so that an entire town that was built around mining eventually decayed or declined. It's a great place to visit. In the last century, toward 1980s or so, the hippies took over the town, and it's full of gift shops and art studios. But there is a portion where they have an old mining museum. And I've gone through it, and I was not into EVs at the time. I think I missed that car, but if there's an EV up there to be seen, that's a whole nother reason to go back up to Jerome at some point and visit.
Oh my gosh, yes. I have been up to Jerome several times. My mother-in-law was born and grew up in Cottonwood, which is just 5 miles down the mountain from Jerome. In fact, it was not that long ago that we went through her old elementary school, which is now a museum up there.
Okay.
And she'll make the jokes. We don't have to about she's so old that everywhere she went is a museum. So
okay.
But no, I have not seen that electric car at the Gold King mine. I'm going to want to make a trip up there with my wife just to do that.
And it's fascinating for anybody that's into mechanical stuff, because it's all ancient mining equipment, before, they had foundries back then, but it was just, it's a fascinating old technology, and lots of it up there.
Yes.
And of course, it's a wonderful drive. There's elevation. You can go up the back way of Mount Mingus. Wonderful driving roads too, switchbacks going up if you go through Wickenburg and then up the back way. And of course, beautiful. It's up on the side of a mountain. YouTube, George is joining us. He's saying, question about M3 squeaking, the Model 3. The control arm bolts need to be torqued while the car is on the ground under load. So that's so that the bushings aren't twisted, if that makes sense. Well, that's great sage advice, George. Yeah, that seems to make sense.
Yeah, appreciate that very much. Again, George has a follow-up and comment where he says the GM EV battery department employees are making half the pay per hour of the GM assembly line employees.
Well, there's a disparaging situation there, and yeah, I could see where there would be some need to adjust that.
Yeah, the amount of change that's going to be coming into the automotive industry is not going to favor people who resist change.
You know, this isn't the first time we've gone around this. In the last century again, after the OPEC crisis. Again, the UAW had a stranglehold on the auto manufacturers here in the U.S. Timing was terrible. No one wanted their large cars anymore, and Japan took over, and Europe with their small, fuel-efficient cars. So we've replayed this once before, and I hope Mr. Fine is listening, and common sense prevails. We need to support these three auto manufacturers at this point and help them transition.
Yeah, and when they help them transition, Roger's comment from YouTube is exactly what I would say too. A message for the UAW workers. In 5 years, you can ask for the moon if you have a job.
That was a big if, all capital letters, yeah.
At that point, just the fact that your company is there means that it's successful in the new marketplace.
Good point.
And it is going to be a new marketplace.
George is saying, I feel GM should offer their employees more stocks rather than more pay. So just like Tesla employees, the harder you work, the more your stock goes up. I feel that's the best financial solution for all.
I would agree with that. You know, the UAW is probably not going to like that very much. There's a lot of other unions that are not real keen on having their own employees become owners of the company. I think part of that goes back to the union leadership. If their employees all turn into the owners and the stockholders, and the management is trying to make the stockholders happy, they're out of a job.
Yeah. You know, I don't know how Tesla has been able to avoid unionization, but they've done a pretty good job of keeping them out. And typically the way it works is just offer something better than the unions.
Yeah, typically that's it. I mean, for years and years and years, Toyota, Honda, Nissan, the Japanese factories have been building cars in the southeastern U.S. Tennessee is especially a big hotbed for U.S. auto manufacturing by Japanese companies. And for many, many years, those companies were non-unionized. And a lot of it had to do with simply the fact that the companies offered a better compensation package than what the unions themselves had negotiated. So the union had no way of going in.
And of course, since we're on that rant about unions, there was a place at one point in time for unions. They were very beneficial. Child labor, for example.
Oh, yeah.
But like many things, eventually we outgrow it. And it's kind of like car dealerships at this point, selling cars. We've outgrown that. Get over it. It's no longer viable. It's no longer feasible, and the people don't want it.
Yeah, and in my opinion, there may even still be a place for unions in our economy, just not necessarily where they're at right now. And it's not because the unions are good, bad, or otherwise. It's that unions have largely done their job in the heavy manufacturing industries. Mm-hmm. People get paid a good living wage, whether they're unionized or not, I mean, more often than not.
YouTube, Roger Starkey, all capital letters, opportunity, great point. The transition to EVs and green energy is a generational opportunity. If you're smart and stay in the right place at the right time, is the USA listening? Others are. Good point.
Yeah, very good point. Ahmed on TikTok says, love what you do and your content. Thank you.
Yes. Instagram, Tanuj JRND, he says, hi, welcome.
Hi.
Appreciate you joining us.
YouTube, George again from the Watch Rich Rebuilds channel. I want to give that plug every once in a while. If Elon's factory robots ever get an AI consciousness, they might go on strike in the future.
As an employer, it's intriguing to have employees show up every day, robots that work 24/7, never ask for a raise, don't need vacations, don't even take bathroom breaks for that matter.
That's right.
And productivity suddenly goes to a whole new level.
Well, and you think about it, we've seen the videos of robots building robots. Mm-hmm. So what's to say you couldn't have something automated to fix the robots that are working as their parts wear out? immediately coordinate their downtime so that they can do the proper preventative maintenance, and there's no human interaction at all.
Yeah, fascinating concept, and it's quickly coming our way. So, Roger Starkey with YouTube, he says, at Watch Rich, agree on the shares, great incentive. They'll say it's communism, socialism. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Or they might say it's capitalism at its worst.
Yeah. Or come up with completely harebrained accusations like the Russians are that they're Nazis in Ukraine.
Yes. On Instagram, Veer BMO16 says, hey, which is a good and safe battery? Lithium ion batteries are good and they are safe.
It's a high energy density, and
they're high energy density. When things go wrong, the lithium ion battery cannot handle some of the things that can go wrong, as well as other technologies that may be out there. In other words, lithium ion is more likely to catch fire than, say, a solid state battery would be. But that doesn't mean that they're not safe. We hear about the lithium ion fires in cars. Occasionally you hear the rumor of a car spontaneously catching fire, and it's almost like an airplane. When an airplane crashes, it always makes the news. It's always catastrophic.
Right.
And then you find out how often airplanes crash compared to cars. And you're like, well, okay, I'll probably take an airplane anyway, because an airplane is about 99% safer than a car.
Yeah.
And so the same tends to hold true for electric vehicles. We talk about fire, but the reality is a lithium ion battery pack in a car catches fire about 1/5 of the amount of time that an ICE vehicle catches fire. You just don't hear about it on the ICE vehicles.
So Roger points out that the Cybertruck is slightly smaller than the F-150, the Ford F-150, and larger than the Rivian. Longer bed than both.
The Cybertruck definitely does. It has a 6-foot bed, and the standard Ford F-150 has a 5.5-foot bed. And the Rivian, I believe, has just a 4.5-foot bed. I don't know otherwise on the dimensions.
George is saying, but Roger S., the Cybertruck can float in water for half an hour plus. LOL. Well, it's at one point, I think Elon was even suggesting that it had a dual function, that it would drive on land and you could use it as a boat. And I think he's backed away from that a bit since then.
I kind of would hope so. Highlander Apparel on YouTube says, yep, Ingersoll Rand, founded on mining. And then Instagram, Alex in Pomona says, I'm looking to buy a Model Y. When would be the best time to buy to get the best deal?
I don't know. What do you think?
I'm thinking if you're looking for a Model Y, you and I have talked in the past about this. Electric vehicles don't age quite the same as ICE vehicles. On an ICE vehicle, it's all about the age in time, in years. On an electric vehicle, it's more about the mileage than it is the age in general. I mean, we have roadsters that have 15-year-old batteries that are just going strong and doing great. So if you were able to find a Model Y that is a couple years old but is exceptionally low mileage, you may end up getting that Model Y at a steep discount because the valuation is based on the old ICE model of age versus miles.
Good point. And, I don't know whether the question was directed at what is the best opportune time in terms of buying a new vehicle, and that would have to do with what tax credits are coming up, what federal or state credits are available. If it's a used vehicle, I do have a suggestion there. Not that you're going to find too many Model Ys at dealerships, but I advise people stay away from dealerships. Your best shot at getting a used vehicle, in my opinion, is to look on the Craigslist, OfferUp, your local places that private individuals are selling vehicles. And the reason I suggest that is you will be able to get a lot more history on that vehicle. How many times have people had a car that was a lemon and decided, I'm going to trade this in. I don't want to deal with this anymore.
Right.
none of that history, that negative history, is going to be communicated when you buy that car from that dealer. And of course, you have a markup, and you have taxes, and you have dealer prep, and all that other crap that they throw into a sale. With a private sale, you have a distinct advantage in that you can go and see the people that are selling it. You can see how they live. You can see how well they take care of their other stuff. And you can listen for the story as to why they're selling it. And if you're astute and you read between the lines, you can see if there's hidden agenda or if it's legitimate. And at that point, I think you have a much higher probability of ending up with a good purchase than if you try to buy something from a dealer.
Well, if you buy from a dealer as well, you're never going to be able to get the kind of history you might be able to get from a private individual. It's a private individual, for example, would be likely to disclose the name of the repair shop that they went to. And then you can go and call that repair shop and say, hey, I'm looking for some records on such and such car. And it's currently owned by, John Doe over here. And they'd say, well, why you're looking? Well, I want to buy it, but I want to find out what kind of work you've done on it and what your opinion is of their car. And they'll be likely to give you a good opinion because they're thinking, well, hey, I might have a new customer for this car as well.
So service history as well, yeah.
Yeah, so I agree with you. And even AutoTrader and Cars.com have options to filter the listings to only private sellers, since the dealers have kind of taken over both of those areas. But it was meant originally to be a person-to-person marketplace.
Right. George is asking, he says, are Gruber employees union? Boy, I wouldn't have been saying all those disparaging things if they were, George. But no, they are not, thankfully.
One other thing real quick, guys, on the best time to buy, when you guys were talking about tax credits.
Yeah.
Just briefly, there's a banner on the Tesla website. I'll pull that up. It's suspected, we don't know for sure, but there's a thing here. I'm going to zoom in on this. On the Tesla website. I don't know if you guys could read that. It says at the top, federal tax credit $7,500 available for the new Model 3, Model Y. Reductions to this are likely to happen after the end of the year, though. So so definitely buy before the end of the year if you want the full tax credit.
Okay.
At least that's the speculation.
Thank you, Jesse. And we actually have a pro-union comment here, which is, by the way, we appreciate opposing viewpoints. Don't get us wrong here. We have opinions. He has opinions. Sometimes we don't agree either. Yeah. But we'd love to hear from our audience. YouTube, Pino Mastrani says, they need to ask for much more than they expect to get, talking about unions, and they have taken many concessions over the years. Well, that's a general rule of negotiating. If you're going to sell a car, if you're going to sell anything, you always start higher because you want to let the potential buyer feel like they got a bargain when you come down in price.
Yeah, and a good professional negotiator is going to enter a negotiation and have his or her list of demands. They're going to have their walkaway amount, which they would call their best alternative to a negotiated agreement or a BATNA, and on both sides, they're going to come to an agreement that says, okay, this isn't necessarily what we wanted, but it's better than any alternative that we could get. And that's a hallmark of a good negotiated agreement. I will be, even though I'm admittedly not a pro-union person myself, I have a lot of respect for the things that the unions have accomplished over the decades. They have truly accomplished some good things in our country.
Okay. YouTube, Highlander Apparel, .GM Toledo on Lasky Road. They're a transmission plant. Okay, there's a new addition for EV motors, and what is that?
Maybe that's a transmission again. Okay. They want me at half my normal fee.
Oh, you're trying to get a job there. Okay, all right, gotcha.
Yeah, and that's going to be a challenge. Is it possible that the job itself has changed so that in such a way that the complexity of what's needed in the transmissions just isn't there now. And the people that they're looking for need to be skilled in different areas.
So it's a different skill requirement, therefore a different pay grade.
Yeah. Do you remember when we were talking with Sandy Monroe, how I believe it was Sandy who said his grandfather worked on steam engines, had great experience on steam engines, was an expert on steam engines, and then diesel came.
Mm-hmm.
And he had to start at the bottom again. He had to, if he wanted to continue to work on engines, because he didn't have diesel skills, he had steam skills. And I think that's going to happen here too.
It looks like Niles is joining us. Welcome, Niles, from YouTube. He says, good morning. He says, American unions are very different from the European unions, which are very mindful of the health of the companies. Now, they're smart. It's more of a collaboration than an opposition. Hedrick Smith had an excellent series on PBS years ago that laid out the differences between U.S., Germany, and Japan. Things have changed since then, but it was good info for the American, cut off there for the American public, I think is what he's saying.
Yeah. Thank you, Niles, for that. You always have the insightful takes, it seems like. And you're right that there is a culture in America that is both fiercely independent, more so than elsewhere in the world, and more antagonistic, actually, in many cases as well. I want my way no matter what because I'm an independent individual, and there's not as much of that culture of collaboration as there are in other areas of the world. Yeah, there are other areas of the world as well that have more what I would call groupthink, where individuality is de-emphasized or even frowned upon.
Yeah. In the United States, we have a lot of polarization. Do you remember Raphael, the world traveler that went around the world in a Tesla Roadster, was telling us offline, my wife and I actually, when we took him to dinner, about the Swiss. And they have a unique voting system in Switzerland. They're using cell phones. And they feel that will get a better handle on things like voter fraud and manipulation. But anyway, he was surprised by the fact that the Swiss actually voted a tax increase to improve the roads.
Wow.
A collaboration. And, you think about it, where else would that take place? But anyway.
Yeah.
Thank you for those insights. Yeah.
On the union thing, I have something from the CNBC article about Mary Barra. It's just, I know, I agree with you guys on the statement that, hold on. Sorry, I'm not on screen.
Right.
Hold on.
He's going to put his sunglasses on.
Got to switch over here. All right. Oh, kind of off center. But it's saying here in this article, I'm going to kind of be off screen while I read this. Mary Barra received $29 million in salary. The fine, I think, the guy that's leading the union is saying that it would take a factory worker 16 years to make as much as she makes in 1 week of work. Yeah. So the redistributing the profit and the wealth of that company is vital. That's absurd.
Mm-hmm.
My devil's advocate point to that, Jesse, and he's making a legit point that article does. If Mary Barra screws up something, GM goes from $12 billion of profit to $2 billion of profit. She's responsible for all of that. If a factory worker screws up something, the worst they could do would cost a couple of $1 million to the company.
Or the trunk lid needs to be replaced or redone on that car.
Yeah. So there's a level of responsibility that she has that factory worker will never, ever approach that's far greater than the disparity in wages.
Well, while we're on the subject of executive pay, I have another news item here. The Tesla chief financial officer, Kirkhorn, he's leaving Tesla with, get this, $590 million. Now, he's going to be stepping down. He's been in the role of CFO at Tesla for 4 years, but he's been with the company for 15 years. He was one of the original there, apparently. And He is leaving on a very friendly note. In fact, Elon said, I would like to thank Zack Kirkhorn, for his many contributions to Tesla over the course of 13 often difficult years. Much appreciated and best wishes for the next stage of his career. Now, again, this wasn't a salary. He had stock options. I worked with people at Digital that had stock options.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not exercising your stock options, you're not getting this kind of return. And I actually knew people there that did not exercise stock options during the heyday of Digital Equipment Corporation. And I was confused and shocked. I'm one of those people that likes to build wealth and likes to invest, right? But anyway, it gets back to, is anyone worth $500 million after 13 years there? I don't have an answer to that, but it does happen.
It definitely does happen. And, you know, if there is a little bit of luck in some of this, Zack found himself working for a company with no guarantees, but with the potential promise of great returns in the future. He chose to stick it out. I mean, if he was there 13 years, that puts him back to 2010. And so the Model S was still in development. Tesla is in the press every day, just about. Oh, the company is failing. Oh, they're not going to make it. You know, all the negative press, all of the bad stuff that goes along with that. But he stuck it out. He did leverage his options. He went ahead and, as a result, became a very wealthy person.
And, you know, the thing that the article doesn't say, and we have to point this out, he's been CFO for the last 4 years, but he started 13 years ago, and he may have started at the bottom. But again, it's one of those people that work their way up to something to eventually the CFO of a large multi-billion-dollar corporation. There must have been a demonstration of skills during that time and commitment and excellence, and certainly not working 32 or 40 hours a week. I guarantee you.
Definitely.
So again, you know, putting some things back in perspective here.
You know, some of the things I heard, as I did some follow-up reading on this, some of the things I learned, you know, many of the early Tesla employees are what they call Teslaionaires, which is millionaires as a result of their Tesla stock. We don't know what he has planned next at this point. That hasn't really been disclosed anywhere.
And we don't think it was another job offer.
No,
I don't think anybody could afford him.
In fact, the speculation in most journals is that he's taking a break from the company in order to position himself to, in the somewhat, whether it's far long-term or near-term future, take over in even a more significant role, either in Tesla or in one of Elon's other companies. Not unlike what J.B. Strobel did. You know, he left the companies, has founded Redwood Materials, and now is back on the board of directors.
Right. In fact, they say that in this article, in the past year, it looked like Kirkhorn might be the person to succeed Elon in taking the reins of the all-electric car maker.
Yeah, and there's still a lot of speculation that he'll be back within a couple of years. I hope for the best for him. He obviously left on good terms. He's helping with the transition to make the next CFO successful.
Correct.
And it seems to me that he's leaving on good terms, and it's going to be a good thing for Tesla.
We have a question from YouTube, Christopher Korn, and this is a question for our social media guys. He said, what social media aggregation program are you utilizing, or are you having to do multiple applications or leave them open?
Jesse, is that something we would want to broadcast out there? What service or what we use?
I mean, I'm not sure. I don't understand the question. I mean, we're on 8 different platforms currently, so I don't know what the question is.
Well,
So the question is asking, how are we doing that? Do we have a stream open for each and every one of those, or are we using some kind of software?
Oh yeah, no, it's a combination. We have multiple streams running, and we have an aggregate software that we use. It's called Restream.
Restream. Okay.
Restream. Right. There are a number of competitors out there that do it. Farzad, and a lot of the Tesla influencers use their own card called Yardstream. I mean, there's a number of them. You just have to pick which one works for the platforms you want to use.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you.
By the way, Jesse gets very busy back there. He's got all kinds of dials and soundboards and screens live, and if he looks like he's zoned out, that's usually what happened.
Yeah, we appreciate everything Jesse does.
Yeah, I'm over here doing research, pulling up images, and keeping these various streams alive.
I have to admit, Jesse's the one guy, if he's not here, we don't go forward.
Well, and he's the heaviest multitasker in our company, I think.
I think he is as well. So
Appreciate
YouTube, Roger Starkey has another comment on buying a Model Y. He says, buying a Model Y, you get the best deal on the day that you buy it, and it's the best EV available. Everything else is variable. That's as true a comment as you're going to find.
Mm-hmm. George is saying when to buy a new Model Y question, buy right before the fourth quarter earnings. LOL. Good point. Yeah.
Sure. Roger continues on YouTube and says there are companies who will provide a detailed battery condition report. In Europe, these companies are affiliated with Bosch, so they have a good reputation. He's not sure if that's true in the U.S.
You know, I've heard of some aftermarket software packages that can be connected to the CAN bus signals on the various Tesla cars. We have not used the aftermarket stuff. We have our own. And but yeah, that I think is going to be a huge industry at some point in time because when you go to buy a used car, it would be nice to get a full battery read on that car.
Well, and I even remember it was going through social media a few weeks back that there is a hidden service mode on the Model 3 that allows you to see both the CAC, the calculated amp hour capacity, and to do basically a 24-hour battery test and reset. It's designed for the Tesla service center people to be able to get a good gauge of battery health, but somebody had published it online. The CAC value is actually pretty valuable when it comes to looking at the strength of your battery. It's as a distilled number. It doesn't tell the whole story, but it gives you a good idea.
We began to use that on our Tesla Roadster matchmaking site a couple of years ago, and it has become very popular now. I see a lot of these auctions now are either publishing it or the people that are interested in buying the car or bidding on it are asking for the CAC value. So our newsletter that shows people how to extract the calculated amp hour capacity on a Roadster oftentimes gets passed around because of that.
Yeah, I'm not surprised at all. Crunch has another great question for us on YouTube. He says, I'm headed in my Model Y long range for Joshua Tree to view the Sunday AM Perseids Meteor Shower. With your high and dry climate, he says, I used to live in a similar climate in Ridgecrest, California. What's your favorite astronomical viewpoints?
Boy, it's been many years, Crunch, since I've been involved, but in Tucson, they have the McGrath Solar Telescope up on Kit Peak, I believe it is. And we actually had a digital equipment user group meeting up there 45 years ago or so. And it was fascinating being up, first of all, the elevation, some switchbacks to get up there, and then a wide array of telescopes. And what I vividly remember is walking into a lab area, and in the center of this lab was a flat table with a bright 4 or 5 inch light disc that was coming down from the ceiling. And it turns out that that was the distillation of the McGrath Solar Telescope. And from there, they then fed this information into a variety of measuring equipment to extract data about the sun and sunspots and temperature, solar activity, and all of that. But if I have a favorite here in state, I would say that would be it. It would be that Tucson Solar. Oh, let's not forget Flagstaff, Percival Lowell's telescope.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I can't remember the name of it, but
it's the Lowell Observatory.
Yeah, they give tours up there.
Mm-hmm.
And what's fascinating about this was built around the turn of the last century. They actually use car tires or wheels on this rotating platform to open up the dome and spin it around depending on what they want to look at. And just seeing those tires there, is remind you how low tech this was at one point in history.
Oh, that's fascinating. That's wonderful. My particular favorite spot when I go to see something just like the Perseids Meteor Shower, I like to get that full sky view.
Mm-hmm.
And in my time in Arizona, probably my favorite spot is just south of the south rim of the Grand Canyon. The Grand Canyon is a designated national dark zone, so you won't have any lights around you at all.
Oh.
And when you, the south rim itself has a fair amount of forest, but you get down to the village that's 3 or 4 miles south of there, and almost immediately you get out of that forest, and the sky just opens up. You're higher elevation, so it becomes a little bit clearer there. You have no lights whatsoever around you because it's a designated dark area. And you can look up and see the Milky Way and see the meteor showers. So that's probably my favorite spot.
So you can tell we're technical guys. We love these kinds of questions.
Yeah.
All right. YouTube, Roger's asking the tax credit reduction. Okay, it's rumored that the Model 3 Highland will have the new CATL M3P batteries with the same price as the LFP, but 15 to 20% more performance, as it will be supplied from China. Well, that's good info.
Well, and he's asking about, as such, will it be supplied from China? And at the moment, I'm going to have to say I'm not sure. I thought that the Model 3 Highland batteries, while they were going to be the LFPs, that they were going to be the 4680s, I think is what they are.
The structural battery
The structural battery pack. And that they were going to be mostly manufactured actually down in the Texas gigaplant, and were not necessarily going to use much, if any, Chinese technology or batteries.
Mm-hmm.
I remember hearing about the CATL batteries as well, so I'm a little fuzzy on that. I know that in order to keep the full credit, there's a certain percentage of U.S. made that has to be there. It does not have to be 100% U.S. materials and U.S. manufacturing yet. That's a couple years off. So it's possible that the CATL batteries could become part of the Model 3 Highland, and the Highland could still be eligible for the full tax credit because the other parts of the car raise that percentage of U.S. made or American made to a high enough percentage.
Okay. YouTube, Highlander Apparel says, awesome point on the used cars. A little while ago, we were talking about where the best place to buy a used car is. He said he just had to sell Mom's after she passed. Sorry to hear that. He says, much better for both parties on both sides. A private sale is what we're talking about here.
Right.
We got money, and the buyer knows our, I'm assuming, service history, perhaps.
Yes, I think I'm going to assume so as well. Niles is back on YouTube. He says, I think Hedrick Smith started out by asking, with twice the energy costs, higher interest, and a minimum wage of $20, how can Germany compete?
Good question and good answers.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's worth watching, Niles.
Yeah, definitely is. You know, we have some of those questions here in the States. Even Arizona went from one of the lower minimum wage rates in the country, in the United States, to one of the highest.
Really?
It's indexed to inflation. And so with inflation being as rapid as it has, the state of Arizona has reached that $15 an hour minimum wage starting this next year. And that's a minimum wage that there's only about 6 or 7 states in the entire country that have.
Did not realize.
And we have in our Gruber communication products area, we have a fairly large assembly area, and most of these cables have to be hand assembled. There simply isn't an automated way to do that. So we ask those same questions of ourselves on a regular basis. How do we make it work with a high minimum wage, a fairly fixed process? What can we do?
And of course, we end up having to pass on the cost, which increases inflation.
Yes.
George says, what is Mr. Pete's bonus a year? LOL. Well, I don't get a bonus. Yeah, I think there was only one year that we did that. It was like 20 years ago.
Yeah, wasn't that? Well, it was like, I think 2010 or 2011 or something like that.
Yeah, and it was basically the federal government requiring us to do so. Otherwise, we would have faced the penalty.
Right. Crunch has another comment to Roger Starkey on YouTube as well regarding the battery status. It says, I ran the service menu calibration, but after about 24 hours at 12 amps, there was no detailed report, only a battery is good. So this is that's the
Right.
service test that I was talking about. And he asks, has anyone else tried it? Now, Crunch, I don't have a Model 3, and because we don't have Model 3s off of warranty or Model Ys that are off of warranty, we don't see them very much yet.
Yeah.
But that's a good one to throw out to the listeners. Has anyone else tried that hack to do the battery test and see if you can get detailed information? Some people report getting nothing back but what Crunch has gotten back, that the battery is good. Other people report getting all kinds of information.
So Mike Aldea, old Tesla employee on YouTube, is commenting on the shares that we talked about earlier and the Tesla Nairs. He says, Tesla Nair, LOL. I wish I held on to every share I ever had. I could have retired in my mid-30s, but then again, it's easy to say looking back now, but it could have easily gone to zero. 2017 was close. And, you know, he echoes what a lot of the Tesla employees have said. Can you imagine working for a company where, Elon even comes out publicly in meetings and tells them, look, guys, I don't know if we're going to make it. In fact, at one point, he actually said to the team, the employees, we've got a 10% chance of making it. Now, I mean, we run a business here.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I both know what would happen if we walked out on the floor and said, we've got a 10% chance of making it. The problem is a number of people now are going to be polishing their resumes and saying, I can't afford this risk. I've got kids in college. I've got a mortgage. I've got a boat to pay for. I've got insurance. I've got, and I need a secure and stable job. So the people that hung in there with Tesla were quite remarkable, actually, and Michael is one of those.
I completely agree with you there. What we're not talking about when you talk about Tesla and ours, what about all of the people in the late 90s and early 2000s who put all their money and a lot of their salary into stock options for Silicon Valley companies that then failed in the dot-com bust?
Happened before.
Mark Cuban, owner of the Dallas Mavericks and businessman, he was one of the lucky ones. He got amassed his wealth, had $3 billion in wealth, and said, I'm good. I'm going to get out.
Yeah.
And he wasn't buying the hype that it's going to go up forever. And it was only about 6 weeks after he got out that the bubble burst and things started to decline.
Yeah.
So he was lucky. He got out at the top.
I think George is baiting me. He heard me say in earlier podcasts that I am like Ron Burgundy and that I will read whatever's up on the screen. But this one I'm going to pass on, George. It's a good one, though. As usual, your sense of humor is 10 on 10.
Yes, absolutely. Yesterday we read one of George's comments that
yes, I read it.
I thought about afterwards and thought that was probably not safe for podcast.
But keep them coming, George. We just won't read them all. We'll censor a bit, if you don't mind. TikTok, only my dog loves me. All right. Buy the sunglasses. Trying way too hard to look cool. It ain't that bright in that room. Come on. Well,
we haven't had sunglass questions in a while.
I know. People have probably resigned themselves to the fact that this is a cool organization and that people here wear sunglasses during video productions. We are working on a video. We just haven't had as much interest in it lately. So, but we will at some point release the reasons why we wear sunglasses, and coolness is just a small part of it. Only my dog loves me. So stay tuned. All right. So any other news items here?
We've you had one news item about a question that one of our or a comment that one of our customers had. He recently took a roadster for delivery, and was asking about a service center over in Northern California.
Yeah, let me bring that up here. And it was a Roadster, by the way, that sold on our website under the Tesla Roadster free matchmaking service. We sell a fair share of roadsters, actually, and our mission is we're matchmakers. We're like a dating service. We unite buyers with sellers. And anyway, this was one that sold, and the buyer is up in San Francisco, and he asked the question. He said, "When are you guys going to open a service center up in the Bay Area?" Felt that might be there's enough business up there to do that. He also says that he lives in the hilly parts of San Francisco, and he is totally amazed how this car, this roadster that he just bought, is able to traverse those hills and take him up to his house. Apparently, he drives a lot of cars, and he's just never seen torque and horsepower like this in a small sports car. So my answer to him was a standard answer that I generally am asked often: why don't we scale? Why don't we open in other areas? And I outlined it for this customer this morning. And what I said was, if it was roadster only, the business, in other words, there aren't enough to support a bricks and mortar effort. And this is the same problem that Tesla is running into. That's why they're regionalizing their service centers. It's very difficult for them to have a roadster-trained individual at all 260 or whatever service centers with as little business as they see with roadsters these days. The second reason was finding skilled staff is a major hurdle since no formal classes are yet available to train, and roadster expertise is now condensed to a couple dozen people in the United States. That's about what's left in terms of skills. And then three, I said branching into other Tesla cars or other brands would do a better job of creating return on investment for a bricks and mortar effort in a different area. But number two is still a barrier. And again, that takes us back to finding skilled staff is a major hurdle. And we're not the only ones facing this problem. Any of these new EV manufacturers are facing the same issues. Where do they find people that can work on these electric cars? And oftentimes it's a long learning curve with lots of OJT and typically unprofitable for them. So their service delivery is not going to be generating any black ink anytime soon.
You know, my take, and partly to you, Pete, right now it's going to be hard to do. Come back to us in 5 years. When the Model 3s are starting to come off a warranty and we have a lot more Model S's off a warranty, then maybe we can talk, because California, especially that Northern California area where Tesla is where Tesla was founded, they're going to have a huge number of cars that are coming off of warranty, and their service centers, I think, are going to be inundated. There might be opportunity then. Now, I just don't, even then, we have to be bigger than we are in order to be able to consider an expansion like that.
You know, one of the things that we do is, in order to work on Tesla Roadsters, we seek out individuals that are skilled or that were involved in the design effort of the Tesla Roadsters. And these were early pioneers, you know, people that were skilled enough to be able to design a power electronics module for the drivetrain, for example, or a switch pack or a vehicle management system so that all the CAN signals, the brains, in other words, of the car. And what I often found was, as we would contact individuals that were involved in the early Roadster days, including Michael Aldea, by the way, is that many of them had gone on to other jobs, including Michael, companies like Zoox, companies you know, that are emerging. Lucid was another one, Rivian. But one of them was Proterra. I heard that name often, and Proterra is a electric bus company. They just currently filed for a Chapter 11. They were a $1.6 billion company before they went public in 2021. And the shares originally during IPO were around $16 a share. And just to show you the impact of a Chapter 11 filing on stock prices, they went from $16 a share to 16 cents a share. Again, it has to do with investor confidence. Do they think they're going to survive? Will they Will they traverse Chapter 11 or end up in Chapter 7, which is a final closure of the business? But what's sad is we don't want to see any of these EV manufacturers fail, because the whole goal here is to get fossil fuel burners off the road and replace them with especially something like mass transit. Electric buses will probably save a lot more or improve emissions, because buses spew a lot of hydrocarbons. They have large diesel engines, and if you've ever driven behind one or happened to park next to one at a light with a convertible, you realize that there's an enormous amount of emissions being spewed out.
Or a motorcycle.
Yeah, it's almost like Aaron doing his rolling coal thing with his pickup truck over there.
That's right.
But anyway, file for Chapter 11, and they have assets currently worth $818 million and debts of $609 million. And I won't take you through all of the numbers here, but apparently the largest unsecured debt was a $27 million owned to LG Energy Solution, which was the major battery manufacturer that had a long-term agreement to provide batteries for Proterra. Well, this is the same company that provided batteries to Tesla during the 2016 Roadster R80 pack development. So they are currently in Chapter 11, which of course provides them protection from creditors while they attempt to repay their debts and reemerge. Apparently, Proterra has been losing money and cutting jobs this year, and because of rapid growth and increased operating expenses. Now, they did manage to create a bunch of buses out there, and let me see if I can find that. They have sold over 1,300 buses to transit agencies across 43 states and some Canadian provinces. The Proterra buses have driven about 40 million service miles since the buses were launched in 2010. And finally hanging it up and attempting to go through some protection so that they can hopefully recapitalize, reemerge, or sell the business. So again, it was one that we looks like did not make it, and may not make it long term.
Might not make it. And I did a little bit of extra digging myself on this one. I had given you that article on our Gruber Morning Show Facebook page, and found that this kind of took the EV industry by surprise. You know, Proterra is one of the oldest EV companies out there. They got their start in 2004, actually.
Oh, 2004.
Yeah, they actually started clear back in 2004 and started delivering their buses in 2010.
Okay.
Here are some of the things that may have led to their bankruptcy filing, and they do hope to be able to continue in business after reorganizing their debts and working with creditors. They diversified in 2015 from one product line, which is to make electric buses, to 3 product lines. They're building a manufacturing facility for batteries, a powertrain manufacturing facility, and a bus manufacturing facility. That transition from 1 to 3 kind of different product lines was a big strain on the business. As they're getting that going, they ran into COVID, which meant all kinds of supply chain, and then they ran into inflation. Now, the reason that inflation is big is because of their customers. Their customers are typically government municipalities that have constrained budgets and long time frames. So these guys would sign a contract at the beginning of 2021 to provide a bus, and that contract isn't going to be funded, and they're not going to be taking the municipality is not going to take delivery of those buses until late 2022, maybe 18 to 20 months later.
Mm-hmm.
Well, between 2021 and 2022, the cost of raw materials has gone up 15%,
mm-hmm.
and they were operating on a 6% margin.
Oh, okay.
Because a lot of municipal contracts have state mandated maximum profit percentages that will be somewhere between 3 and 6%. So it's very possible that the company has not survived the inflationary cost increases combined with the restrictions of dealing with municipalities and their thin profit margins combined with supply chain. They just kind of all conspired to put this company into bankruptcy. That also means, though, that when you look at the inflationary environment, where inflation is really starting to ease here in the United States, it's largely going to be a recession-proof industry. Municipalities need buses, whether or not the economy is good, bad, or otherwise. There is a lot of hope that this company is going to be able to survive.
Well, that'd be wonderful. I didn't realize 2004, that's around the time Tesla got started.
Yes, they got started pretty close to the time when Tesla started. That's why you would see many Tesla employees potentially jumping to a company like this.
And you would think that if they started in 2004, they went through all the rough years, the first decade or so, you would think that from there survival is guaranteed.
Yeah.
But as you pointed out, there was a whole new twist to this with government and with inflation and slim margin.
And the good news for the rest of the industry is that the kind of headwinds that Proterra has had to struggle against are not common in the EV industry, because they have a very specific type of clientele that's not common to EVs, that has combined with these other circumstances. While other EV manufacturers have struggled with supply chain and inflation, they don't have the long contracts where prices are locked in 2 years in advance.
And the municipal business for the other EV manufacturers is a very small subset. Police departments, fire departments, admin offices within cities and states ordering vehicles.
Right. And for these guys, it was virtually their entire business.
YouTube, Roger Starkey, he said, but if you are cool, of course, you wear sunglasses. Well, of course.
Of course.
Did you watch the Blues Brothers movie, you know? What about the Matrix, Neo? Now, is he uncool? No, he's wearing sunglasses. He's one of the coolest guys on that in that movie. George says, I got to go. Great show. Have a great weekend, guys. You're welcome, George.
Yes. And Anwar on Instagram, he's coming in from Kuwait. Hi, Mr. Gruber. It's been a long time. Big hello from Kuwait. He says the temperature is 57 centigrade. We're frying. Now, 57 centigrade is about 134 degrees. That's one area that's a little,
134?
I'm not kidding. Not kidding.
That's worse than us. I thought we were bad.
Yeah, that's worse than us.
Wow, I had no idea.
Yeah, and I know that Middle East area is many places there are hotter than we are here.
So YouTube, Mike Aldia, he says, yeah, my entire time at Tesla service, I could count on two hands all the techs that could work on Roadster batteries in service. This was before remanufacturing was a thing. There are probably more people that work on Roadster batteries at Gruber than Tesla service. The internals, that is, not just the battery swaps. And you know, Michael, we often wonder that ourselves because we work with a lot of the service centers these days, and they're pretty good about moving people around to work on Roadsters. But we've often suspected that we may have more staff working on the old traditional internals of the Tesla Roadster batteries than anyone at Tesla at this point.
Yep.
We just ran into a situation, by the way, Michael, where a Tesla service center realized that their recovery charger, which they're beginning to use again, by the way, that was a thing that David Sands built, if you remember, was at least one of the design engineers of. It's limited that it won't perform under 210 or 230 volts or something like that DC. And they realize, of course, that we charge both bricks, the sheets, and the string. And we're able to coax those back up, and we don't have the constraints that this recovery charger has for safety issues. And we're very familiar with that, by the way, because we rebuilt two of them for Tesla. We did reverse engineering on the firmware, and we were able to decode a lot of what Dave Sands programmed into those. But for safety reasons, it does make sense that they should not be trying recoveries on anything under 200 some odd volts. So the car is going to come here. But yeah, you're right. There probably aren't too many Roadster people left.
Probably not. Well, we have just a few more questions, it looks like, while we wrap things up. We've got Julian F36 on TikTok. His theory about us and sunglasses. Alien eyes.
You know, that one's been floated before. And yeah, we don't want those lasers to blind people as we take off our sunglasses.
That's right. Nobody has accused either you or I of being one of the X-Men yet.
Not yet, no.
We'll see. Roger Starkey on YouTube says, meanwhile, BYD is building buses in the U.S.
Yeah, that's sobering, isn't it?
It really is. You know, Elon Musk continues to say his biggest competition worldwide is BYD.
Mm-hmm.
Many people in the U.S. just dismiss it out of hand because it's China. I think he's right.
Mm-hmm.
I think they are a real threat to Tesla worldwide, and they're going to be formidable competition.
Yeah.
And then Roger Starkey on YouTube says also, now we know why Tesla paid off a lot of debt in 2020 to 2022. Yeah, Tesla, as they became profitable, Elon was not, he was a savvy guy. He was a smart guy. And he began taking those profits and pouring them back into the company. And first to retire a bunch of their long-term debt. I think that made Tesla a tremendously stronger company as a result.
Part of our culture here is we don't like debt. We don't like we don't have a lot of new things here. When we go out to get chairs, for example, we go out on OfferUp, Craigslist, and we look for office chairs. Usually we find bargains, and you know, it's comforting because over the past 40 years we've had a lot of competitors. And typically they'll overextend, you know, especially when they get venture capital money or they go through an IPO and they think, oh my God, we got money to blow at this point. And most of them are gone. You know, in order to survive, you definitely have to try to shed your debt.
Well, they come in, they buy all this new stuff, they make a splash, they go out of business, we buy their stuff.
Yeah. It looks like Michael is saying, Dave Sands and I still work together. We work on electric semi-trailers. That's right. You guys are with a different company now that has an electric motor and battery in it. It's called Range Energy. Well, Michael, do me a favor. Say hi to David, and we'd love to hear from him or have him join us on the podcast. David was also one of the foremost design engineers on the Tesla Roadster, extraordinarily bright, knowledgeable, and made a huge contribution to helping make the Tesla Roadster project successful.
Yes, you know, that'll be a good topic for our future podcast, is to digging a little more into that trailer battery technology. I've heard a little bit about it, and it's fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Roger's saying regarding the debt, not just Elon, Zack Kirkhorn. Yes, good point.
Yes.
That's the Mark Schaffner at Tesla, is it not?
He is the Mark Schaffner of Tesla. That's right. And I can say, as the Mark Schaffner of Gruber, we did a lot of the same thing over the last few years. We retired a lot, just about all of our long-term debt now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was shocked the other day when you guys were saying we've got 7 commercial buildings here, and I said, how many mortgages do we have left? And Mark says, you know, we got rid of all of those. We paid them down. We got rid of them, and we don't have that mortgage liability anymore.
Yeah, for those main buildings, there's just why would we?
Yeah,
you know, it's been against our philosophy.
Our working capital is put into research and development and continued growth, and you know, we've always grown on cash flow. That's the other thing that's remarkable. We've never gone out for a loan. I think our first loan was when we got a credit line 35 years ago or so, and that was based on receivables. That helped, you know, the window between receivables and payables.
Yeah, you know, and we got rid of that credit line about 7 years ago.
Yeah,
we were not using it, and the bank came to us and said, "Hey, we're going to have to start charging you for this credit line." And we're like, "Yeah, you know, we really don't need it that much."
And they reconsidered their position immediately, I'll bet.
Yeah.
All right, a few more comments, and we do need to wrap up, guys. We're at an hour and a half right now. Christopher Korn, he says, thanks for all the insights and entertainment while I do dialysis. Well, thank you for joining us. And then Roger Starkey says, just by the way, Zack Kirkhorn has at least 1 engineering degree. Okay, well-rounded education.
Not surprised that Zack would have that. It's people who are in that chief financial officer role are frequently not finance people, I'm learning.
Yeah.
Even my background is in technology. I have a computer information systems degree, not a finance degree.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm finding that I'm far less uncommon than I originally thought.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, thank you guys so much for being here today. Our next podcast, I think, is actually going to be you and Jesse on Sunday. You're going to talk about all things AI.
AI, and then tomorrow, if you want to see our Gruber Power Services team, that's Claude Dixon and Elvis Venter. They're going to be doing their podcast at 10 o'clock. I don't think they've invited me to this one, so I won't be present or starring in that one as well.
Can be in the chat.
I can be in the chat, yeah, all right. And then, yeah, Sunday is our AI podcast. We actually are going to bring some comments the Pope made into this one.
Oh, that'll be a good one. And for this podcast, join us next Tuesday. We'll have more to speak about Lucid and some of Farzad's comments. And you guys make it work. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.